Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Unit 6 of your theory course, your grade 12 theory. This is the last theory unit of your high school career. Hopefully this is creating a little bit of a tear in your eye, a little bittersweet. Or maybe you'll be happy to be done with all this craziness. We're going to be talking about seventh chords. Now, you know about them from previous units. You've used them before. You know that there are different kinds of seventh chords, depending on the kind of triad, the kind of seventh that we're talking about. But here we're going to put them into practice. Okay, so we've talked about in previous units about three kinds of seventh chords: dominant, minor, and major. So we're going to talk about each one, when and how to use them, and how they add color and richness to your music, okay, as opposed to just using the traditional triads. All right, so we're going to jump into the first section here, which is the dominant sevenths. Now, we also talked in previous lessons with these dominant sevenths. They have a specific purpose. Their purpose really is to tonicize a new key or a different chord. They're called dominant sevenths because you know the word dominant means 5, scale degree 5. Okay, these are seventh chords built on scale degree 5 of another chord. Okay, what you're seeing here, the cadence, it's called cadence point. What's happening here is we're in the key of C major. We have a G7 chord to a C chord, or in other words, a 5/7, 5 to 1. G, C, 5, 1, and here we have a dominant seventh chord in first inversion to a root position C chord. And that sounds, if I'm just going to turn on the camera here, I'm going to move this a little to the side so you can see the keyboard as we get going. All right, so the harmony sounds like this. Sorry, I didn't add the seventh, that F. Here we go. Ready? Okay, that's seven. The seventh chord really pulls your ear to the C. La, 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 la. Not that I can sing very well. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. La, 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 la. Your ears really want to move to that C chord to find that resolution. Okay, so that's the first point, the first opportunity in which you would want to use the dominant seventh chord. Okay, moving on to the other example here, a modulation to G major, right? So you can see this example is in the key of C, and we've got, oh, where's my little pointer? So we've got the key of C major, empty key signature, and we're quite clearly in C major. We have C, F, A minor. These three chords are all part of, there's a 1 chord, a 4 chord, and a 6 chord. All right, but very quickly we move to a D7. We have an F sharp in here, and we move to a G chord. Now G is also part of the key of C major. It's the 5 chord, but the fact that we have a dominant seventh chord here incorporates an F sharp, and it makes the G sound like a new tonic, like a new home bass. All right, if I orient your ears, let me turn on the camera one more time. Actually, let me move the keyboard, the screen over a little bit so you can see the keyboard again. Okay. If I move this, whoop, sorry. Okay. Now, if I orient your ears to C major. Okay. Now, if I play through the first few chords, a C to an F, and then I go to G. If I skip that D7 and go straight to G, that doesn't really sound done. It feels like you want to go back to C, right? Now it sounds done. Okay, but if I include that D7 chord, that G chord will sound like a home bass. It'll make it sound like, here's a new tonic. Have a listen. I'll play the chords again in the same order: C, F, A minor. And now D7. And now G. Doesn't that G now sound so much more like a home bass? What we've done is modulated or implied that G sounds like a new home bass. All right. Let me add the melody to this. The melody that's written on the page on the screen here. All right. What that F sharp is actually doing, it's making the G sound like a new home bass because it's acting like a seventh. A scale degree 7. Scale degree 7 of a G major scale, or the key of G major. We are implying that we're moving to the key of G. All right? La 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 la. Here we go. I'll sing again. Bear with me. La 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 la. Sorry. La 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 la. Let me try that one more time. La 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 la. Now I did just notice a little typo here. In the actual on the actual sheet, it says D7, but they're not actually playing a D7 chord. They're only playing a D major chord. Okay, do a little bit of math here, a little thinking with me. D7, D would be D, F sharp, and A. Right here we have D, F sharp, A, and the D in the bass as well. What we're missing here is the seventh. So what they should have actually had, if we zoom in here, they should have added that guy. That's the seventh. Okay, so a D chord. That's what's on the page. But to add the C natural would have just added that much more tension and helped to make the G chord that much more stable, that much more like a new root. All right. Okay, so that's the use of the dominant chord, the dominant seventh chord. All right, moving on to minor sevenths. Now, with minor seventh chords, you can place them on top of any minor triad. If you're in a key, let's say a major key, the 2, 3, and 6 chords are the minor chords. If you're in a minor key, the 1, the 4, and the 6 chord. Sorry, the 1, the 4, and the 5 chord are generally minor, but the 5 you can make major to make it a dominant seventh. In any case, here we have a minor melody in D minor. Let me just turn on the camera for you. Move this over a little bit so you can see. And here we go. So the melody itself sounds like this. And what we're doing here is in the first two bars, we've got D minor 7 and G minor 7. What they're using here is, let me just get my little arrow pointer here so we can see. D minor 7, you have the root, the 5th, the 7th, and the root. They've decided to leave out the 3rd of the triad, the F, but that's okay. It still technically works out to a D minor 7. And then for a G minor 7 chord, the triad is G, B flat, D, and the 7th is on top right there, the F. Okay, so I'm going to add in the F chord, the F note to this first triad, just to give it the full picture. Okay, so D, F, A, C, and the octave. Okay, a very rich sounding chord. If I were to leave out that 7th, the C, I would have this. Listen to the difference. Okay, to a G minor chord, and then adding the 7th. Very rich sounding, luscious chords. Alright, you can always use a minor 7th chord in place of a minor chord pretty much anywhere. Okay, so if I were to play this melody or sing this melody with just the minor triads, la 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 La, 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 versus la, 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 la. The difference is subtle, but it does create a lot more texture, harmonic texture in what you're doing. Okay, now to play the whole thing. La, 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 dee, la, 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 la. Not that this is part of the lesson, but over here, you'll see that we use A7. We do have a C sharp accidental. The only reason we have that, of course, is because it is the raised seventh of D minor to really help this last chord sound like a tonic. If I were to use D naturals there, use a minor 5 chord, right? I would have this. I would go la da 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 la da 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 dee la da dee 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 da, using a C natural. It works, certainly it works, but adding that C sharp creates that tension. La da dee 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 la, la. All right, so that's the use, that's the importance of that dominant seventh. Okay, so let's move on to the major sevenths. Now, down here, the major sevenths can be used in place of major triads when the third or the fifth is in the melody. When the tonic of the chord is in the melody, the addition of the seventh will clash, so a major seventh should be avoided in this situation. Essentially, let's say you're in a major key. Let's take C major, because this is the example that they're using right here. In the key of C major, when the melody is using the scale degree 3 here, as in the beginning of this bar, right? It is totally acceptable, totally good to use a major 7 chord. All right. If the melody was on the tonic like this here, you would want to avoid it because this note C is right a half step away from this B note. So because they are physically beside each other, that's what creates the tension. All right. Let me play these two examples for you. I'm just going to move this off to the side a little bit so you can see the keyboard. Okay. Now, the harmony, the piano part that's being played, it sounds like this. Okay. We have the root, the fifth, the seventh, and the third up top. Okay. And then to an F chord. Okay. So the melody that's on the top here, okay, la 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 la. The melody is actually playing this E note up top. Okay. Whereas in the second example over here, the melody is playing the tonic, the C. So have a listen to how that sounds. La, 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 la. You physically have the C note in the melody beside the B note of the harmony. Okay? You don't generally want to avoid those notes being right beside each other, okay, in the overall texture. But when the melody is doing this with the E on top, when there's actual space between your notes in your harmony, that definitely works. Or if the melody was playing a G as part of on this tonic chord, that definitely works. You can add that seventh chord, that seventh of the harmony, and it works, okay? So the general rule when you're using a major seventh chord, try to avoid using the major seventh when the melody is singing or playing the tonic. That's the general rule. Okay, let's get on to the next 2 pages. We'll talk about these activities. All right, a couple activities here that get you practicing making use of these seventh chords. So for the first one, circle the inappropriate use of the two seventh chords in this example. Remember, the real times you want to avoid use of the seventh chords is when you have major seventh chords and the melody is playing the tonic. Okay, that's the first big giveaway. All right. Other clues may present themselves here, but I'll leave that to you. All right. The next one, circle the four chords in this example that could have sevenths added. Again, remember that rule. You don't want to use major seventh chords when the tonic is being played. Other than that, it's almost sky's the limit. Certainly when you have when you have a 5 chord, you can almost always add the seventh. All right, moving on to the bottom here. Include secondary chords and seventh chords to make a more interesting yet still tasteful jazzy arrangement of Jingle Bells below. I'll just do this with you real quick. I'll show you the traditional harmony. Okay, 1 1 1 a 1 chord for the whole first line is generally what's happening. A 4 chord to a 1 chord. To a 5 chord for that, a 1 chord again for the whole next line, and then a 4 chord, a 1 chord, a 5, and a 1. Or if you want to think of this in terms of its chord pattern, we're in C major, so C all the way through, F to C to G, C here, F, C, G, and C. Something that is done in the middle of a phrase, in the middle of a song. Okay, here when we end on the 5 chord on the G, sometimes composers and arrangers will take this bar and do the 5/7 chord of G to make G sound like a new tonic. All right. Let me just play this opening for you so you can get an idea of how it sounds with the harmony. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Yeah. So this G chord as is, when I just play a G chord for both bars, sounds like a 5 chord and it sounds like I'm not done. Right? But if I were to use in this bar, in this 7th bar, try and make G sound like a new tonic. Do some interesting harmonic stuff, okay? What would be the 5 chord of G? Okay, if I was in G major, the 5 chord is D, and I could make it a dominant 7th by making a D7. Okay, so instead of, oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh, I go, oh, what fun it is to, oh, what fun it is to ride, now to D7 in a one-horse open sleigh. There's all these harmonic options you have at your disposal now that you're using, you have knowledge of these 7th chords, okay? And also, don't forget, it also says make use of secondary chords. All right, don't just use the 1 4 5 like it's here, like the traditional. All right, experiment. You know that here on line 1, it's riding the E note all the way through. Right? What other chords have the E note in it? A 3 chords work in here. A 6 chord could work in here. If you're using a 6 chord, an A minor, jingle bells, make it a minor sad version of Jingle Bells. Okay, use the 7th. Use a minor, A minor 7. Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Get creative. See what comes up. See what you like. Okay. All right. Let's go on to the last page here. Next page. And over here, we're going to adding 7th chords to harmony. Harmonize Amazing Grace again, this time using 7th chords where you can fit them to create a more jazzy arrangement. So just like before, guys, try and think of the basic harmony that would work. Then start adding in some more color, adding in some 7th chords where you think that they would be appropriate. To make a different sounding version of Amazing Grace. Hopefully you have a keyboard at home. If you don't, there are other options out there, software programs, apps that you can plug in harmonies, and it can really help to give you an ear for how these seventh chords will add color and dimension to your arrangements. Okay, enjoy, have a good day, and we'll see you in the next lesson. Take care. Bye.